Okay guys, so here's part two, all right, part two of the video. Now we're actually gonna go ahead and multiply. So part one was just like an intro to it. Here's part two, okay? So I have two matrices here that I'm going to multiply together, matrix R and matrix S, okay? And what I would do first is see if you're allowed to multiply, right? Look at the dimensions. Now these are both the same, so more than likely, yes, we will, but let's still list it. So this is a 2 by 2, and this is another 2 by 2. So the inner dimensions, they do match, so I'm allowed to multiply these. The outside will tell me the result, so it will be a 2 by 2 matrix. Okay? So if you like to highlight or color, this might be a good start for you. So you're going to take, remember, it's the row by column, just like we did in part one video, and we're talking about the basketball points. So we're going to multiply each element together. So 3 times negative 2. Okay, we're going to put that there. And then you're going to go, what, 2 times 1? This guy here. Okay, so it'll be plus 2 times 1. And I'm going to simplify this afterwards. In fact, let me just zoom in a little bit so you can see that better. Okay. All right, next, we're going to take this exact row again, and we're going to multiply it. Let me just erase this carefully. And we're going to multiply by the second column next. Okay? So that's going to be 3 times 1 over here, plus 2 times negative 1. Just like that. So now we're done. And think of it this way, it's like reading a book, left to right. So now since I'm done with like the first page, I'm going to go down and work on the next row. So because of that, I'm going to change the row here. I'm going to look at this row now, and I'm going to go back to the first column. So here's the first column. Okay, I'm going to do the same method. Multiply these two elements, so negative 1 times negative 2 will go here. Oops. Reverse the order here, sorry. And then I'm going to add these guys, so 0 times 1. Okay. Not done yet. I got one final thing to do. I'm going to change the column here. So I'm going to look at the second column. And once again, multiply. So negative 1 times 1. And then 0 times negative 1. Just like that. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the answer right below it. Okay, so that way we can see what the result is. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to talk about how can we, know it's row by column. Like, how can we memorize that in a way? Maybe not memorize is not the right word. So we have negative 6 plus 2 gives me negative 4. 3 plus a negative 2 is a 1. So that's 0, right? And then this guy here becomes a positive 2. And then negative 1 plus 0 just gives me negative 1. So here's my new matrix as my final answer there. Okay? Now, here's what I want to talk about. Look at this guy right here. In fact, let me get rid of this big circle that I just put around this matrix. After I did that, I regret my decision. Look at the position here. So this guy is in the row 1, column 1 position, right? Now notice, how did we get to that guy? Well, we literally, let me just erase these guys now. Goodbye, so long. I literally, for this guy, I took row 1 of the first matrix and column 1 of this matrix to make this guy. So do you see that the new matrix, when we're done multiplying, that position represents the elements of this guy and this guy that I got to get to this. So let's look at another one. This guy right here is in the A12 position, right? And I literally took row 1 and column 2 to get to that guy. Okay? So the cool part is, if you're not sure, like if you're looking at, let's say this was blank, and you're like, okay, how do I figure out what this guy is? Okay, well, look at it this way. This is in the second row, first column position. So that's telling me I need to multiply the second row by the first column, and that will give me the element for that guy. So it's pretty cool that this right here, the positions, is telling you specifically what row and what column to multiply by to get that element. Okay? I know that's a lot of information right now. Just breathe. It's okay. All right? We're going to practice this for a while, so it'll get a little bit easier. Okay? All right, let's try another one then. This looks good. Okay, so new matrix. And we'll still stick with a 2x2 for both of them. The next two examples that I write up here will not be as thus. Okay. So once again, check the dimensions. I know this seems trivial. I don't know where that came from. But it's good practice for what we're going to do in the next two examples. Okay, so it would be nice to do. So the inner dimensions match, so I can multiply. My outside dimensions tell me what the answer is going to look like. It's going to be a 2x2. There we go. Okay, so I made this one bigger because, once again, if I'm going to put a lot of operations in there, it's good to have space. Okay, so remember, when we multiply, it's always row by column. Okay, so we're going to take this first row, we're going to multiply it by this column over here. All right, so it'd be 3 times 2 plus -1 times -2. Okay, and going back to what I did in the previous, this position is 1, 1, right? So it's going to involve row 1 and column 1. Okay, so I think that's a nice way to remember. Okay, next, moving on. We're still going to keep the same row, but we're going to just change the column. Now we're looking at this column over here. So 3 times 1, and then -1 times -3. We're going to add those guys. Oops. And I'll zoom in just a little further. There we go. It's always hard to see when I record myself because I'm not quite sure if you can see everything clearly. And it ends up working out. But I just want to make sure. Okay, so now I'm done with this first row multiplying everything. So I'm going to change the row finally. And I'm going to go to the next row, just like this. Okay. And now I'm going to look at the first column again and repeat the process. So 1 times 2, 0 times -2 is what I'll add to it. Okay? And then finally, I'm going to keep the row. I'm going to change the column. There we go. So for our last spot over there, it would be 1 times 1 plus 0 times -3. Okay? And once again, if you're not sure what you're multiplying by, look at its position. This guy right here is in row 2, column 2. So that means I'm looking at row 2, column 2. Those are the two I'm multiplying to get that guy. So there's a reason why the positions and the way we multiply kind of match up there. Okay. Now the final result is to simplify. So 3 times 2 is 6, plus that becomes a 2, so that gives me an 8. Ooh, that was a weird 8. This would be a 3 plus a 3, which gives me a 6. This would just be a 2. And this guy would be just a 1. I'm done simplifying. So there's my new matrix. Okay. Questions, thoughts, concerns, dilemmas? You're going to have to shout at the screen because I can't hear you. Okay, you're silent, so I'm going to assume that it's good. Okay, now, for the next two problems, let me see how long this video is. Okay, it's 10 minutes, it's not bad. I might have a part 3 video, to be honest, I have 2 word problems I want to try out with you. Okay, so the next example is what happens when they're not the same size? Okay, let's get a little bit goofy here. Let's mix it up. Okay, 2 by 2s are nice, but are you always going to have that? No. No, you'll never. It's always going to be something different. Just like if you look at part 1's video, it was not like that. It wasn't like that at all. All right. Now, you're probably thinking, wow, this looks a lot different than before, and it does. The size of this guy is 2 rows by 3 columns, and this is 3 rows by 2 columns. Those are the sizes. Now let's take a look. Do the inner dimensions match? They do. Dun, 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 dun. So what that's telling me is I'm allowed to multiply these. Now what's the result going to look like? Well, the outside numbers tell me that. It's going to be a 2 by 2. What? That's just weird. There we go. The result's a 2 by 2. That's just something else. Okay. So let's go ahead, and once again, it's row by column. So this row gets multiplied by, by this column over here. Okay? So -3 times 1. And here's what I'm going to do just to save some space. I'm actually going to go ahead and multiply them. Okay? I'm not going to write every multiplication part. So -3 times 1 is -3. 2 times 4 is 8. That's what I'll add to it. And then 2 times 0 is just 0. Okay? Now, this guy over here, remember, the answer is 2 by 2. So this is what? Row 1, column 2. So row 1 I keep. I go back to column 2. Okay. So -3 times -2 is a positive 6. 2 times 3 is another 6. 2 times -1 is a -2. Okay. All right. Now we're done. So now we're going to go to the next row. Boom, this guy. So that means I've changed this. I'm going to this row. I'm going to change the column back to the first one. Now, once again, if you're not sure when to do that, look at its position. This element right here is in the 2, 1 position. So that means row 2 and column 1 are the ones that I'm looking at to do that. Okay? So here we go. -1 times 1, -1. -2 times 4 would be -8. I'm adding to it. 0 and 0, 0. And once again, I know in the previous examples, I showed just the multiplication part and then simplified. Right now, I'm just kind of skipping that one step. It saves space, but I mean, you're going to find out the more you do these, the more you're probably going to do some of the addition in your head, multiplication in your head, and that's perfectly fine. Just be cautious, because this is where minor little algebra or computation errors can happen. Okay, now we go to the last column here. So -1 and -2 is a positive 2. -2 times 3 is -6. 0 times -1 is a 0. So for my final result, I'm going to add what I have here. So in the first spot, I get what? 5. -3 plus 8. This would be 12 plus a -2 gives me 10. Down here in this corner, it gives me a -9. And over here, it gives me a -4. Okay. It does seem daunting, not going to lie. When you see 2 matrices you're multiplying and the dimensions don't match, you might think, oh boy, this could get ugly. And you don't have to think that way. Go by its position. If it's a 2 by 2 here, right, that's the result, we know that. Go by the positions. This guy is in the first row, first column position. So that means the first row and the first column is what goes there. Okay, so the positions of these elements are telling you what to multiply in each matrix. Okay, I don't know if I sound like a broken record, but I'm just trying to pound that into you so that way you know. Okay, so what are we up to? I think we got time for one more. All right, so let's do another goofy one. Okay, let's do this. Oh, this would be a perfect one to end on. And then what I'll do in part 3 of my video is we'll take a look at 2 word problems and how do we come up with like a matrix form, okay, and how we multiply the result. So let's see, we got 1, 4, 0, -2, 3, -1. And we're going to multiply it by -3, -1, 2, -2, 2, 0. Okay, so there's my new problem. I don't know if you caught this or not, but I changed the dimensions. The the problem before this, the dimensions, the matrices were like reversed. So I'm switching it up. And here's the cool part. When I switch them up, the answer is going to be a different size. Okay, this answer is not going to be a 2 by 2. So let's first look at the dimensions. So this guy is 3 rows by 2 columns. And then this guy is 2 rows by 3 columns. Look at the inner dimensions. Yep, they match. I'm good. The outside dimensions tell me how large the new matrix is. So this one, it's a 3 by 3. That's my answer here. The last one was a 2 by 2. So it's interesting, and hopefully it's proving my point that what I said at the first video, I think I said it very briefly, that the commutative property doesn't work for matrix multiplication. Your dimensions for your answer are going to be different. Okay, so that's just important to know that order and how you multiply matters when it comes to this stuff. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do a row by a column. Okay, so 1 times -3 is -3. -2 times -1 is a +2. Okay, now we're going to change it. My fingers are going to be with so much marker on them. Now we'll go to the next column. So 1 times 2 is 2. -2 times -2 is -4. And now the last one. Oh, no, wait, we still want that. Sorry, it's the column we're changing. Okay, here we go. So 1 times 2 is 2. -2 times 0 is 0. Now this is the first example where we had to actually go to the third column, all right? Because this is a bigger matrix, so we had more to add to this guy. All right. So let's keep going. So once again, if you're confused on what to do next, this spot is in row 2, column 1. So that means row 2 and column 1 is what I'm looking for here, to put in that spot. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and simplify it. So 4 times -3 is -12. 3 times -1, -3. All right, changing the column. Now we're going to look at this column. 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times -2, -6. All right, back to changing it. Boop. Yes, you got to make the sounds. If you don't make the sounds, the math doesn't work. Every math teacher knows that's how we're trained. Got to make sounds. 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times 0 is 0. Final row. And once again, if you're not sure what to put there, look at the space. This guy is row 3, column 1. So row 3, column 1. That's what I'm looking for here. That's why we spent the lesson talking about the dimensions, because it's very important. So 0 times -3 is 0. -1 and -1, +1. All right, now we're changing it. Go to this next column. 0 times 2, 0. Negative 1 times negative 2 is 2. Final column. Here we go. We got this guy to worry about. 0 times 2 is 0. Negative 1 times 0, hey, it's 0. We like zeros. Zeros are very nice in terms of calculation. Okay, so now we're just going to simplify what's left. So let's see, for this guy it would be a negative 1. This would be a negative 2 and a 2. Negative 15, 2, and then 8, 1, 2, and then 0. So here's my final answer. So when I multiply this matrix with this matrix, I get a 3 by 3, and then that's going to be the result of it. Okay? And that's it. So it is a process, okay? It will take you some time to practice this and feel more confident in it. But if you pick up on certain clues as to how to multiply, it becomes easier, okay? Do not, under any circumstances, blindly go through this because, think about it, down the line, when you have to do this again in a couple months or something like that, are you going to remember that? All right, so like I said, if you can figure out the position of the element, that's going to tell you what you're multiplying here specifically. And I think that will help you carrying forward what it is. Is there more multiplication to be had? Absolutely. Like I said, there's other methods of multiplying. There's a lot of different ways of looking at it and interpreting it, like geometrically and all that stuff. So more for a college linear algebra class, but for a high school class, this is as far as we're going to go. Okay, so hope you guys are doing well. My notes are online, so you can take a look at it. It has more examples. Part 3 of the video will come. That's where we're going to look at 2 word problems. Okay?